They brought her in chains thicker than a man's arm. Her body was huge, 8 feet tall, covered in gray-blue skin with glowing marks along her arms. Her long silver hair hung over her eyes, hiding a gaze that burned like fire. Every step she took made the ground shake slightly. Everyone in the military base stopped to watch. Silent, afraid, no one spoke her name. They just called her the Giant. She had killed 5 soldiers before they caught her, took out an entire scout ship with her bare hands. Now she was locked in cell 12, the strongest cell on the planet, and still she didn't look scared. She just sat in the dark, breathing slow, eyes glowing in the shadows. No one dared go near. Guards stayed. Behind energy shields, cameras kept watch 24/7. Doctors, scientists, and officers talked from behind glass. "What is she?" They whispered. "Some kind of warrior breed." Another said, "No emotion. No fear. Just a weapon." But then, something strange happened. A man in a black uniform walked into the command center. His face was rough, with a long scar across his jaw. Captain Daniel Reeve, war hero. Survivor of 3 alien wars. Known for one thing, he never backed down. "I'll talk to her," he said calmly. Everyone turned and stared at him like he was crazy. "You'll die," one officer said. "She's not human," another warned. But Daniel didn't care. He simply said, "Open the door." Inside the cell, the air felt heavy. The giant female didn't move as Daniel stepped inside. He took off his helmet, placed it gently on the floor. "I'm not your enemy," he said in a quiet voice. No reply. Her yellow eyes just stared at him like a wild beast judging its prey. "I came to talk," he continued, "not to fight." She stood up slowly, her head almost touching the ceiling. Her arms were thick with muscle, her legs strong like tree trunks. She took one step forward. Down the sound of her chains dragged across the floor like metal snakes. Daniel didn't move, even when she stood just inches away. Then, for the first time, she spoke. Her voice was deep, calm, and cold. "You're brave," she said, "or stupid." Daniel almost smiled. Maybe both. He pointed to the food tray, still untouched in the corner. "Hungry?" She growled softly. "I don't eat what enemies offer." "What if I'm not your enemy?" he asked. She leaned closer, her nose almost touching his. "I smell lies," she whispered. Daniel reached into his pocket slowly and pulled out a small photo. It showed him and a young alien boy smiling. "My son," he said. His mother was like, "You, same eyes." For a moment, the giant's expression changed. Not much, but Daniel saw something shift in her eyes. "You? Bonded?" she asked, surprised. "Yes," he said. "She died in the war, saving humans." The giant looked down at the chains around her wrists. "They fear what they don't understand," she said. Almost to herself, Daniel nodded. "I don't fear you," he said. "That's why I'm here." She stepped back and sat down, still watching him carefully. "What do you want from me?" she asked. Daniel sat down on the cold metal floor across from her. "I want to understand." "You," he said, "and maybe help." Silence filled the room. But this time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt curious. Outside, the guards watched the monitor in shock. She didn't attack. One said she spoke to him. Another whispered she's never spoken before, inside the cage. Daniel and the alien giant sat quietly. No weapons, no screaming, just 2 beings from different worlds, trying to understand each other. The first crack in a wall built by war and fear. And unknown to them, both this was just the beginning, because once the bond started, it could not be undone. Kira had not spoken to anyone since her capture, but something about this human Daniel felt different. He did not shout, did not insult her, and most strange of all, he brought no fear into her cage. She sat with her arms crossed, back against the cold wall, The chains around her wrists clinked softly with every movement. Her yellow eyes stayed locked on him like a predator, unsure whether to strike or walk away. Daniel sat still, across from her on the floor, his breathing calm, his posture relaxed. But his eyes watched everything. She liked that. He was careful, but not scared. She respected that. You have her eyes, Kira said after a long pause. Daniel tilted his head. Confused? Who? He asked. The one in the photo. Kira replied, your mate. He nodded slowly. You knew her kind. I knew her, Kira said, her voice quieter now. We fought together. Daniel felt something shift in the air. Kira wasn't just a soldier. She had memories, pain, honor, something the commanders never saw. They only saw a weapon. He pulled a small item from his jacket, a silver tag on a necklace. This was hers, he said. She died protecting human civilians during the siege of Ardan. 4. Kira's fingers twitched slightly, like she wanted to touch it, but her chains held her back. Her name was Cell. Kira said suddenly, surprising even herself. Daniel's heart jumped. Yes, he whispered. Solara, we called her Cell. A long silence filled the room. Then Kira looked up, really looked. Her eyes were no longer just glowing. They were burning. Daniel held her gaze. Her pupils narrowed, then widened. For the first time, he saw more than rage inside her. He saw grief, and behind that, lightning. She told me humans were strange. Kira said, small bodies, big hearts. Daniel gave a small smile. Sounds like her. Kira leaned forward, just a little. The chains rattled. But she didn't care. She trusted you. She said, that is rare for my kind. Outside the cell, alarms blinked red for a moment. The psychic sensors were picking up something unusual, rapid rise in emotional link patterns. Scientists panicked. Is she trying to bond with him? That's impossible. Bonding can only happen with mutual consent, but the readings are clear. Back inside, Daniel felt a sharp tingle in his head. His vision shimmered. Just for a second, like a soft heat wave across his mind. He blinked and looked at Kira. You feel that too? He asked. Kira's voice dropped into a whisper. The bond has started, she said. Without pain, Daniel sat up straight. No devices. No injections. No command override. Kira nodded, her voice deeper now. Just truth. Daniel reached out a hand, slowly, palm up, fingers relaxed. He didn't touch her. He waited. Kira looked at his hand as if it were a strange creature. Then, carefully, she lifted her own hand. Her fingers were long, tipped with hard, curved nails. Her skin was warm, glowing faintly under the cell's dim lights. When her palm touched, his lightning raced through both their bodies. Not pain memory, not shock recognition. Daniel saw flashes. Kira running through burning jungles, carrying Solara on her back. Fighting machines with claws and teeth, protecting the one human who never treated her like a beast. Kira saw Daniel in a broken bunker, holding a crying child, carrying wounded men through smoke and blood, standing alone against a wall of fire. She saw what he lost, and what he still carried. They both gasped and pulled back, their hands shaking, breath quick and shallow. What was that? Daniel asked, voice low. Kira closed her eyes. The first layer of the bond. It only happens when hearts don't lie. Daniel leaned forward. Can we control it? No, Kira said, but we can. Choose, he nodded. Then? I choose to keep going. Kira's eyes widened. She had expected fear, hesitation, maybe even orders from above. But this human chose with his own will. That was powerful. Your mind is loud, she said. But kind, Daniel smiled. Your heart is loud, he replied, but it's still beating. The cell lights flickered. The base systems were struggling to contain the energy surge from there. Bond? One technician stared at the monitor, shaking. They're sinking, he whispered. That's not supposed to happen. Back in the cell, Kira stood tall again. But now her stance was different. She was no longer just a prisoner. She was a warrior, and she had made her first choice. Daniel stood beside her, different species, different blood, but something ancient had begun to awaken between them. Something that no war, no chain, no command could stop now. Kira had touched many things in Warblades, broken bones, blood-soaked earth, but never a human hand with peace in it. Not like Daniel's. His palm had been warm, rough, real. And when their skin met something ancient stirred deep inside, her heart beat once, hard, and then the bond began to form. Not through force, not through machines, but through choice. After that first touch, she sat in silence, facing the wall, chains still wrapped around her arms. But they felt lighter now. Daniel stayed across the room, silent too. He didn't push her, didn't speak. He just let her breathe. Outside the glass, military officers, panicked, break the bond. One shouted, "She's manipulating him." Another claimed. But no one dared enter the cell because none of them wanted to be the first to get close to her. General Morrow, the man in charge, stared at the monitor with cold eyes. He didn't trust aliens, never had. He especially didn't trust giants like her. "Reeve is getting too close," Morrow said. "Pull him out." But the lead scientist, Dr. Fela, hesitated. "This bond is forming naturally," she whispered. "This hasn't happened in over a century." Inside the cell, Daniel finally spoke. "What happens next?" Kira turned her head slightly, her yellow eyes dimmer now. "Calmer. If we continue," she said, "you'll see who I really am. I'm ready." Daniel replied, "If you are." She gave a small nod and closed her eyes. Daniel did the same. The moment their thoughts opened again, hit them both like a wave. Not pain, not fear, but memory, clear and raw. Daniel saw a battlefield of red sky and ash, Kira standing tall. Her hands covered in blood, but her eyes full of sorrow. He saw her carrying a dying alien child on her back, running through gunfire. He saw her crying alone in a cave, whispering names he didn't understand. Kira saw Daniel as a child, hiding under a table while bombs fell. She saw him holding a friend's hand as he bled out. She saw the moment he found Solara's body, her last breath in his arms. Kira gasped, pulling back, but not out of fear. Out of guilt, "You carry too much," she said, voice shaking. "So do you." Daniel replied, eyes still wet. They looked at each other not as human and alien, but as two souls with deep wounds, wounds that had started to recognize each other. Suddenly, the lights in the room turned red. An alarm blared outside. A message came over the speaker. "Unknown energy surge in cell 12. But it wasn't an attack. It was the bond, growing stronger by the second. Daniel turned to the camera and said calmly, "Don't interrupt us." General Morrow's face twisted in anger. "Enough of this nonsense," he barked. "Send the override signal." A soldier pressed a button, and inside the cell, a pulse of pain shot through both of them. Kira roared, dropping to one knee. Daniel clutched his head, falling back. Blood dripped from his nose, but he didn't scream. Kira's chain sparked, locking tighter. The bond was being burned alive, but Kira wasn't about to let it break. She stood, breathing hard, eyes glowing bright. Her voice was sharp and powerful. "Stop this," she growled. "You'll kill him." Daniel looked up through blurry eyes. "Don't fight them," he said softly. But she ignored him with a mighty pull. She snapped one of the chains from the wall. The metal screamed as it tore loose. Gas hissed from the ceiling, vents knockout gas. Standard protocol, but Kira reached down, pulled Daniel into her arms, and covered him with her massive body. As the gas filled the room, her eyes stayed fixed on the camera. "I will not harm him," she said. voice heavy, "But I will not let you harm him either." And then? She did something no one expected. She curled around Daniel like a shield. Not as a weapon, not as a prisoner, but as a protector. The lights flickered out, and silence returned. In the command center, no one spoke. Dr. Fela turned to the general. "She just resisted a gas that knocks out elephants," she said quietly, "but not for herself, for him." The general's hands clenched. "She's dangerous," he said. "No," Fela replied. "She's loyal inside the cell. Ours." Past, finally, Daniel woke up in the dark, still breathing. He felt something warm wrapped around him, a heartbeat that wasn't human. Kira, even unconscious, had protected him. He whispered her name, Kira. Her eyes slowly opened. "You're safe," she said, voice weak. Daniel looked into her glowing eyes and replied, "So are you." Now. 2 days had passed since the gas incident. Kira was no longer in chains. Daniel was alive. Recovering with a bandage around his head, but something had changed inside both of them. Not just the bond, the trust, too. They sat in a larger room, now no bars, no force fields. Just the two of them, alone, facing each other like partners. Not prisoner and guard, Daniel sipped from a water pack, watching Kira as she paced. She moved like a predator, smooth, careful, alert, but not once did she bare her teeth at him. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm. "They're going to test us today," she said. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, they want to confirm the bond. They want to control it." Kira replied, frowning, "They never change." That morning, they were led through metal halls toward Lab 7. Armed guards followed them. Not too close, just enough to feel safe. But their hands trembled on their rifles. Even now, no one dared look Kira in the eyes. Inside the lab, machines hummed, lights blinked, and a large glass chamber stood in the center. Dr. Fela greeted them with a soft nod. "We'll begin when you're ready," she said. Daniel looked at Kira. "You sure about this?" She placed a hand on his shoulder gently. "I've never been more sure." Inside the bonding chamber, they were told to sit on opposite sides. The walls closed, light dimmed, and a low hum began to rise. You may experience shared memories, emotional flashbacks, or hallucinations. The speaker said, "Stay calm, and do not fight the link." Daniel closed his eyes. He felt a warmth flow through his chest, then his arms, then his head. Then suddenly, he wasn't in the lab anymore. He was floating, surrounded by stars. Kira stood in front of him, her eyes glowing with soft golden light. But behind her, shapes moved, shadows of war. Screams of her past. He saw her holding a younger sibling, barely breathing. He saw her chained to a wall. Blood on her face, betrayal in her eyes. She stood tall through it, all but inside. She was breaking. Kira turned, now seeing his memories. She gasped as the image of Daniel's dying squad filled her vision. She saw Solara's last breath. She saw Daniel sitting alone in a graveyard, whispering names into the wind. The pain was deep but not sharp. It was quiet, heavy, cold. Their minds merged for a moment longer, and then something strange happened. They weren't just seeing each other's past, they were feeling it. Daniel felt what it was like to be feared just for existing. Kira felt what it was like to be helpless with no one to protect. And between those feelings, something grew, not pity, respect. Then the lab systems began to overload. Alarms buzzed, red lights flashed. Their neural link is deepening beyond safe levels. A technician shouted, "We should cut the power." Another warned, but Dr. Fela raised her hand. "No, wait," she said, eyes fixed on the monitors. "There's no aggression, no instability. They're sinking perfectly inside the bond space." Kira looked at Daniel with a strange expression. "You saw everything," she said softly. "You didn't turn away," Daniel replied. "You didn't hide anything." Then something new appeared, a light. A small glow between them. Kira's eyes widened. This is not normal. Daniel reached for the light, and it pulsed. Not dangerous, but alive. It passed from his hand to hers and, then, into both of their chests. The bond had evolved outside. Monitors started flashing symbols never seen before. The bond isn't just emotional, Viola whispered, stunned. It's biological. Their hearts are sinking, not just their minds, suddenly. Both Daniel and Kira snapped back to reality, gasping for air, eyes wide, sweat on their faces. But they were still seated, still calm, still linked. Kira looked down at her arms. Glowing symbols had appeared across her skin. Different than before, shaped like human letters. Daniel looked at his palms, faint blue lines, almost like hers. They both stared at each other in silence. The bond had left marks, permanent ones. The chamber opened, and the guards rushed forward. But Kira didn't move. Daniel raised a hand. We're okay? And they were shaken, but okay. Dr. Phala stepped inside and looked at them with awe. This bond. It's something we've never seen, she said. It's not just about peace or war. It's about survival, evolution, maybe even. She hesitated. Healing. Kira stood slowly, taller than everyone in the room, but no one stepped back this time. Daniel walked beside her, and for the first time, she let her hand brush against his. No fear, no hesitation. The bond test had ended, but something new had begun, and the galaxy would soon learn that this was no ordinary connection. This was the birth of something far greater. The next day, everything changed. Daniel and Kira were ordered to stay inside a private security wing. Guards were doubled, doors locked tighter, and cameras watched every move. No one said why, but Daniel could feel something was wrong. Kira paced the small room like a caged animal. She was calm outside, but her eyes were sharp and her shoulders tense. The symbols on her arms still glowed faintly. Marks from the bond that no one could erase now. Daniel sat on the edge of his bed. Watching the door, they're planning something, he said quietly. Kira didn't answer. She already knew. Her instincts were screaming at her. That evening, General Morrow arrived. Flanked by armed guards, his face cold and full of disgust. You've gone too far, Reeve, he said. This experiment is over. Daniel stood slowly. The bond is working. You saw the results. Morrow's voice grew louder. She's not a partner. She's a weapon. Kira took one step forward, her eyes glowing again. Morrow raised a hand, and the guards pointed their rifles at her. You're making a mistake, Daniel warned, but Morrow ignored him. She'll be transferred to the cryolabs tonight. She'll be studied properly. No, Daniel said, stepping between the guards and Kira. She stays with me. Stand down, Soldier, Morrow barked. Daniel shook his head. I swore to protect life, not destroy it. She is life, he said, nodding toward Kira. Morrow's voice dropped to a growl. Then, you've signed your own death sentence. He turned to the guards. Take him out. One guard raised his rifle but never pulled the trigger because Kira moved first, with a roar that shook the walls. She slammed her fist into the floor. The ground cracked beneath her. Before anyone could fire, she leaped forward not to attack but to shield. She wrapped her arms around Daniel and turned her back to the guns. Shots fired. Energy pulses hit her back, leaving burns, but she didn't fall. She growled, her body trembling, her skin glowing brighter with every hit. She had taken every blast for him. Daniel shouted, hold fire. But the guards didn't listen. They kept firing until the smoke filled the room. Then silence. When it cleared, Kira was still standing, her body smoking, her breathing hard. Daniel was unharmed behind her. She turned slowly, eyes full of fury. Her voice came like thunder. No more, she said. No more cages, No more orders. She moved like lightning, disarming the first guard with a swipe, breaking the second's rifle with one hand. But she didn't kill. She only pushed them away from Daniel, protecting him like a wall of steel. Morrow backed up, face pale now. "You're a monster," he spat. Kira stopped in front of him. "No," she said. "I was made to be one, but now I choose who I protect." Daniel stepped forward beside her. "You can't stop this bond." He told Morrow, "You tried to use her, control her, destroy her. But you forgot something. She's not alone anymore." Sirens echoed through the base. Emergency lights turned red, and lockdown protocols activated. Security bots rolled in. Drones flew overhead. Daniel looked at Kira. "We have to." "Live now." She nodded. "Then stay close to me." They ran through the corridor together. Daniel used his clearance to unlock paths. Kira tore down barriers that blocked their way. Together, they were unstoppable. Soldiers shouted from behind. But no one dared get too close, not after what they had just seen. As they reached the outer hangar, a blast door began to close. Daniel dove forward and rolled under it. Kira followed, but her shoulder got caught for a second. With a growl, she ripped herself free. Leaving a dent in solid steel outside, the cold wind blew across the landing pads. Daniel spotted a small patrol ship. "It's unlocked," he said. Kira didn't hesitate. She climbed into the pilot seat. "Surprising, Daniel, you know how to fly." She smirked. "I taught your kind long ago." The engines roared to life as drones chased them onto the pad. Shots flew through the air. Daniel took the co-pilot seat, shielding Kira as she launched the ship into the sky. They broke through the clouds just as missiles locked onto them. Kira twisted the controls and shouted. "Hold on." The ship dived, flipped, then shot upward with a roar. Missiles missed, drones scattered, and then they were gone, lost in the stars. Inside the ship, Daniel sat back, breathing hard. Kira's arm was burned, her face bleeding but. She smiled. He looked at her and whispered, "You saved me." Kira turned her glowing eyes toward him. "I always will," she said. Behind them, the military base was burning, but ahead was a new beginning neither of them had planned. The stars stretched out like rivers of light, but the moment was not peaceful. Their stolen patrol ship shook under pressure, alarms blinking red. Daniel sat in the co-pilot seat, sweat on his forehead, blood on his chin. Kira flew with one hand, her other arm limp and burned from the energy blasts. Behind them, drones followed fast. Missiles locking onto their heat signal. A warning flashed on the screen. "Missile inbound, brace." Kira shouted. The ship jolted as an explosion hit the rear. Panels sparked and the lights flickered. Daniel slammed into the side, gritting his teeth as smoke filled the cockpit. "We can't take another hit like that," he coughed. Kira's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll have to vanish." She twisted the controls sharply, and the ship dove toward a nearby planet, covered in red sand, black stone, and endless storm clouds. No signals. "No colonies," Kira said. "Good enough for hiding." Daniel checked the maps. That planet's barely mapped. No landing zones. Kira gave a sharp smile. Perfect. As they entered the atmosphere, fire licked the hull. Winds howled. Outside, like a living creature, the ship shook so hard Daniel thought it would fall apart. Kira kept her focus, guiding the broken vessel between rocky peaks and boiling clouds. Then, the engines gave out. The ship spun, hit a dune. Then another. Metal screamed as it slid, flipped once, and finally crashed into a dry canyon. Silence, smoke, then movement. Kira kicked open the door and dragged Daniel out, just as the fuel lines ignited. The ship exploded behind them, lighting up the canyon with fire. They both hit the ground hard, rolling through the dirt, coughing. "You okay?" Daniel asked, grabbing her arm. Kira nodded slowly. "Yes." "But you're bleeding?" Daniel looked down. His side was soaked red. He tried to stand, but his legs shook beneath him. Kira didn't hesitate. She lifted him into her arms like he weighed nothing, and began walking deeper into the canyon. Away from the flames, the air was dry. The wind full of ash. Behind them, drones circled, scanning the wreckage, but they didn't see them. Not yet. Hours passed as Kira carried him across cracked ground and narrow ravines. Daniel faded in and out of consciousness every time he opened. His eyes, he saw her face, bruised but strong. She never slowed down, not once. Finally, they found a cave, half hidden by collapsed stone. Kira stepped inside and gently laid Daniel down. The shadows swallowed them, hiding them from sight. He opened his eyes and whispered, "You didn't have to carry me." She looked at him, serious. "I don't let my bond die," she said. "Not ever." She tore strips from her flight suit and began patching his side. Her hands were rough, but careful. Daniel hissed in pain, but stayed still. "You've done this before," he said through clenched teeth. "Too many times," she replied, later. As Daniel slept, Kira sat at the cave's entrance, watching the sky, listening for drones. Her body ached, her wounds stung. But her mind stayed sharp. She thought of Solara, the human woman who once saved her life, and now Daniel, the man willing to stand against his own army for her. Maybe humans weren't so weak after all. Maybe they were stronger than her people ever understood. In the morning, Daniel woke to the smell of cooked meat. Kira had hunted a desert creature, strange, spiky, but edible. He ate slowly, still weak. She sat beside him, silently watching. "I never thanked you," he said, "for saving me." "You don't have to," she replied. "You saved me first when you didn't run." Daniel smiled faintly. "I was tired of running." They sat in silence, two survivors, broken but alive. Outside, the storm winds howled, but inside, the fire of something stronger burned between them. Suddenly, a soft beeping sound echoed from Daniel's belt. His emergency locator, damaged but still active. "Someone's coming," he said, sitting up. Kira tensed, looking outside. "Too soon for rescue," she said. "More likely." "Soldiers," Daniel grabbed her hand. "If they find us, don't fight." Kira shook her head. "If they hurt you, I will." Daniel met her gaze. "We're not just bonded now, Kira. We're something they'll never understand." She nodded slowly. "Then we protect it." Footsteps echoed in the distance, metal boots on stone. Voices spoke in code. Closing in, Kira stood tall, pulling Daniel to his feet. His wound still throbbed, but he stood beside her anyway. Together, they faced the cave entrance and waited for battle, for peace, for whatever came next. Because they knew one thing now, whether it was through fire or storm, they would face it together. The footsteps stopped just outside the cave. Daniel and Kira stood side by side, bruised, burned, but unshaken. Kira's hand gripped a metal rod she had shaped from the wreckage. Daniel's arm was around her waist, more to steady himself than to fight. The bond between them pulsed quietly like a second heartbeat inside them both. A voice shouted from the rocks above, "Captain Reeve, surrender now. You are under arrest for treason and theft of military property." Daniel didn't answer. He looked up at Kira, whose golden eyes narrowed like a hawk's. She didn't blink. She didn't run. She simply stood tall, ready to fight for him again. Daniel took one shaky step forward, raising his voice. "You're wrong," he said. "I didn't steal a weapon. I saved a life." There was silence for a moment. Then another voice came. This one calm, female, familiar. "Daniel. It's Dr. Fela. We tracked your beacon, but I told them not to shoot." Daniel relaxed slightly. But Kira didn't lower her guard. "They'll try to separate us," she whispered. "I know," he replied. "But not this time." Slowly, Daniel stepped out of the cave with his hands up. Kira followed, her massive frame casting a shadow across the canyon. Soldiers stood in a half circle, weapons lowered but ready. Drones hovered in the air, scanning every movement. General Morrow wasn't there, but the order in the air was clear. Don't trust her. Dr. Fela stepped forward, eyes wide with shock as she saw them. Kira's burns, Daniel's wound. The bond marks on both of their skin. You survived, she whispered. Together, Daniel nodded. More than survived, Fela turned to the lead officer and said, "This is not an enemy combatant anymore. This is a bonded partner." The officer frowned. That doesn't change command's orders. She's still classified as a threat. Kira stepped forward and spoke loudly. "Then let me speak for myself." Her voice echoed through the canyon. The soldiers flinched at first, but didn't fire. They listened. I was created for war, trained to kill, told to hate your kind, she said. But one human only, one offered me peace. He gave me his trust before I earned it. She looked at Daniel, then back at the soldiers. If you kill him, you will make me a weapon again. But if you let him live, I promise you this, I will never raise my hand against your kind. Again, the air was heavy. No one moved. Then Daniel added softly, "She's more human than half the officers I served with." Dr. Fela took a deep breath and said into her comms, "Cancel the capture order, requesting immediate evac for Captain Reeve and Subject Kira. Classification change from threat to allied lifeform." The lead officer hesitated, then nodded. Weapons lowered, drones pulled back. Kira's grip on her weapon loosened. Daniel nearly collapsed, relief washing over him. A transport ship arrived. An hour later, Kira helped Daniel climb inside, ignoring her own wounds. As the doors closed, she looked down at him and said, "You were willing to die for me." Daniel smiled. "Wasn't planning to. But if I had to?" "Yeah." She touched his hand gently. "You gave me more than freedom," she said. "You gave me a reason to live." Back at a secure base far from the city, Daniel was treated and healed. Kira, too, received medical care not as a prisoner, but as a guest, though many still watched her with nervous eyes. None dared challenge her anymore. Weeks passed, and rumors began to spread. Some said a human soldier had bonded with a living weapon. Others said the alien giantess had fallen in love with a man no bigger than her arm, but those who knew the truth simply called them something else, the first pair. In time, new laws were written. Bonding between species was studied, not feared, and Kira became the face of change. Not a weapon, not a trophy, but a warrior who chose peace. She stayed close to Daniel, always at his side. When asked why, she always said the same thing. Because he didn't ask me to obey, he asked me to choose. And she chose him, again and again, in fire, in battle, in silence, and in peace, because once there was only one human soldier with the courage to bond with her. And because of that courage, a giant who was made to destroy became something greater. She became his protector, his partner, his warrior, and maybe his future.